CashFlow Diary Podcast, episode 466.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other CashFlow Diary Podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because here's the thing. What it comes down to is I know that you've got all kinds of ideas. Maybe you have a product. Maybe you have a service. Maybe here's the thing I know. You want to make a business happen, or you want to make your business better. And you know one thing for sure. Whatever the business is, it has to be online, especially today. And you've got to figure out how on earth am I going to reach, quote unquote, my people, your tribe. And what's interesting is that no matter how hard you may try, you can't avoid technology these days, and you must. So whether we're talking e-commerce, digital marketing, search engine optimization, it doesn't matter. But what does matter is that you're listening today, and I have a person with me who does those very things. E-commerce, digital marketing, search engine optimization, in case you missed it. But what's exciting is that he's going to share his information with you and I, because he's won awards for being the entrepreneur that he is. Specifically, the Colorado Small Business of the Year Award and the Inc. 500 Award-winning Entrepreneur Award. And he's also written a number of books. Probably most notably, The Influencer Effect, Insider Tips for Gearing Up Your Online Success. So here's what I want you to pay attention to. I want you to pay attention to his story, not because his story is going to be unique and interesting, but because you are going to learn a number of things from it that you can go out there, replicate, duplicate, and implement immediately. So help me welcome Greg Jameson. Greg, how you doing?
I am awesome, Jay. Thanks for having me on here today. I am really looking forward to our conversation.
As am I, because you dabble in a side of the internet that I've only considered passingly, because I'm like, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't know if I want to do it. So,
you know, it's actually kind of funny because when I got started doing all of this, I never really thought of it as a lot of work. It was kind of fun and exciting for me to do it. And as the internet keeps changing and more regulations get put into place and more systems get put into place, and Google changes this and the browsers change that, and, on and on, all these things keep happening. And all of a sudden it's like, this is actually kind of complicated anymore.
Yeah, I know. Now, before we get too deep into it, this being your first time here at the CashFlow Diary, what I like to do is ask everyone the same question as we get started. You ready?
Ready.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. So, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, the Hulk, etc. Because I tend to think that entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, as an entrepreneur, occasionally I can envision myself running around town, maybe wearing a cape, etc., and saving my customers with our products and services. But also, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about it, Spider-Man, at one time, he was just Peter Parker, going to school, doing, school stuff, taking photos, trying to take a girl out, maybe get some pizza money. That was his thing. And then one day, something occurs to him, something happens, and he realized that, oh my goodness, I have special superhuman abilities, and I get to choose whether to use them for good or for evil. So my question to you, Greg, is as follows. Before the awards, before even your first book, The Dirty Little Secrets, before the businesses that you currently do online, before the web stores, before your public speaking, before everything that people know you for today, what we want to know is, Who is Greg Jameson?
That is a great question. And one of the things that I sit and look back on my life all the time. I have been an entrepreneur my entire life. Many people sit there and they go, okay, I'm going to go work in corporate America. And now all of a sudden I hate my job. I hate sitting in a cubicle. I'm going to go start a business. I've always had my own business. So that makes me somewhat unique, I guess. But what really got the ball running for me in terms of being the techno geek that I am is that clear back in high school, back before anybody else had a PC, my the dinosaurs were crawling on the earth type thing.
Understood. And I just want to be clear that everybody understands when you say high school, you mean before the personal computer was around, yes?
Before the personal computer was around. And quite honestly, just because of the way that my parents thought, we didn't even have a TV in the house. So I literally had to read books and play games and stuff to entertain myself. But my dad was a professor at Colorado State University, and he got a research project where he actually had to go out and buy a portable teletype machine. Now, this portable teletype machine, it looked a lot like a typewriter that had a coupler modem attached to it where you would take your telephone headset and actually stick it into this portable teletype machine.
That's awesome.
And on the side was this paper tape reader that punched little holes into this paper tape that it would feed through to record what it was that you were doing. So this is like 10 years before the personal computer came out. And I actually was able to start writing my own computer programs a decade before anybody else had a computer in their home, which I think that was the moment that the spider bit me.
Yeah, I can imagine this is we'll call it a man before his time, so to speak, going out there doing things that no one has even conceived of and thought about. So this is good. I like it.
Yeah, so that was, I started writing some computer software, and the bug really did hit me. I was like, hey, this is a lot of fun. I can type things into this machine, and it spits something back out at me. It might be an error, but at least it spits something back out.
Totally. Now, there's a thought process out there in the marketplace that says, because I might be older and I didn't grow up with these, phones and computers in my hand, I have to do business the quote unquote old fashioned way. I would venture to say that you have a different thought on this.
I totally do. And one of the things is that the reality is that a lot of times millennials sit here and think that people of the older generations don't understand computers, and that the older people might even think that way themselves. But the truth of the matter is that we're the ones that actually built these technologies in the first place. The younger generations might do, and they do an incredible job of using those tools, but it's because of my generation and the other people out there, the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs of the world, as well as, the Tim Berners-Lees and so forth that did the internet, were the ones that created these systems for the younger generations to actually take advantage of.
And what's interesting now is that the things that I believe we're seeing today are the systems that are being built being built on top of on this, we'll call it groundwork foundation that has already been laid. But there's something interesting in your story that I think a number of people would love to know. And because you said you've always had your own business, how did you achieve such clarity so young?
It was actually kind of an accident, I guess, in some ways. I was going to graduate school and was actually writing a computer program that did, of course, that did landscape design software. And it allowed you to basically go out and place a plot of land out there and start moving some dirt around and placing trees and rocks and whatnot, and creating a landscape design. About that time, while I was still in graduate school, I was working for a landscape architecture firm, and I convinced them that they should buy AutoCAD. Now, this was a long time ago. It was AutoCAD version 1.2, if anyone wants to look up when that was. And they kind of took my advice and bought an AutoCAD system, and it did not do landscape architecture at all. In fact, it was pretty cumbersome. So they kind of gave me the dirty look and were like, Jameson, you better get this thing fixed. So I would go home and work on it on my own time to make AutoCAD do landscape architecture. I brought in what I was doing, and they were kind of excited about it. And the people that sold us the system ended up coming back a couple months later to see how we were getting along with what they had sold us. And I showed them what I had done, and their eyes got real big, and they said, we could sell this stuff. And had a little bit of a discussion with that, and decided, why not? So that was the birth of my first company. It was named LandCAD, and things kind of took off from there. What was really interesting is that as I grew this company to where we were selling software in like 25 countries around the world, the people that sold us the original system, the guy that was in charge of that company, he ended up coming to work for me.
That is funny. Now, here's the question. How did you successfully make this transition? Because this is pre-internet as we know it. This is definitely YouTube and cell phones, and even websites to a degree didn't have that they haven't even come into their own. One of the challenges that I hear a lot is, hey, Jay, I'm too old for short-term rentals is our thing. So I'm too old for short-term rentals and all that technology stuff that you guys are using to go out there and make that happen. I didn't make the transition. How are you able to successfully do so? And more importantly, how can someone else continue to make this transition?
I think that it really has absolutely nothing to do with the technology. The internet makes things maybe simpler to be able to find somebody and communicate with them. But quite honestly, the whole thing boils down to relationships. And what I did, since the product that I was developing worked on top of AutoCAD, is that I actually went up to Autodesk, the makers of AutoCAD, and I showed them what we were doing. And they invited me to come to a trade show with them. And beyond that, because I had gone up there and introduced myself to them, had worked a trade show booth with them, I started to develop some relationships with some of their staff, and that made a big difference. When it was time for me to get an international distributor in, say, Israel, they were the ones that would actually make an introduction to me and say, hey, here's the person that is the distributor in Israel for AutoCAD. Why don't you talk to them? And so building a relationship with someone is really the key to doing business, whether it was in the internet age or pre-internet age.
Got it. So talk to me, take us through this transition. How did we go from LandCAD to WebStores?
Yeah, so the thing that happened was that people were starting to consolidate a lot of AutoCAD applications. There was people out there doing civil engineering software. There was people out there doing architectural software. There was people out there actually doing GIS applications on top of AutoCAD, and all kinds of other things, theater design and whatever, if you could design it in a CAD system, people were doing that. And a lot of the functionality that each of us was doing at the time, there was like 1,200 or so applications for AutoCAD. And we found that we were doing a lot of duplicating of each other's efforts. And as a result of that, Autodesk would actually see some of that too, and they would put some of that functionality into their core product, because if you needed to dimension an object, then it was like people are dimensioning an object, whether they're doing an architectural drawing or doing a mechanical engineering part. So Autodesk would implement some of those features into the core product. Mm-hmm. So the whole industry started to consolidate, and we ended up actually merging our company with a couple of other companies that one that had an architectural application, one that had a civil engineering application. We merged the whole entity in order to take the company public.
Oh.
And we had a successful IPO and went off about our merry way. Unfortunately, I couldn't do anything with my stock for 3 years, so it was not something that was as lucrative as what a lot of entrepreneurs might think is, I can just take my company public and I'm going to be the next Steve Jobs. It doesn't really work that way because the fact is that now you have to answer to a whole bunch of other people. I actually recommend entrepreneurs that you keep your company private at least as long as possible, because it gives you more flexibility than a public company does. But the point of the matter is that I worked myself out of a job.
Right.
And now I was sitting there going, well, what am I going to do next? And I was actually in the Chicago airport when I ran into a past employee of mine. Mm-hmm. And he was kind of looking to do some new stuff too. He had began to work with some people doing some facilities planning types of software. And he had this idea that he could take this facilities management software that he was working with and kind of marry it with AutoCAD and create a scheduling system where people could schedule facilities for different uses.
Got it.
And he said, so how would you like to come to work with me? This is an important lesson for the entrepreneurs listening to this podcast is treat people well. You may end up working for a past employee.
Right.
Now, in fact, we were partners in this new venture, but the lesson is the same, is that you need to treat everybody well, because, as I said, everything really comes down to relationships. So we ended up going into this partnership, and we created a scheduling software that we specifically marketed towards schools. So if a school had a gymnasium that they were not using at certain times, they could rent it out to, say, a youth basketball camp or to a church, whoever might need it. They could rent their classrooms out in the evenings for people that needed meeting spaces, scout groups. They could rent out their sports fields when they weren't using it to, say, a soccer club or whatever. We actually ended up getting most of the school districts in Colorado to use our scheduling software, and they were making additional revenues that they had not been making before. So that was a good thing.
Yeah, no, I like it.
I learned a lot about doing database software during that time, and we actually built this as a web application so that people could fill out a scheduling request form on the internet and see what things were available when. Now, today, that's not that big a deal. You see that all the time with, people buying airline tickets or whatever. But at the time, it was kind of trend setting.
Yeah, no. Well, I was actually thinking when you were talking, it's the concept is been around for a while, and now the implementation of how we handle excess space or excess capacity is different. I mean, if you think of companies like Airbnb or Uber or Lyft or, I was going to say Handy or even TaskRabbit, all of these are kind of it's the same concept, just employing something different. Whereas you guys were focused on facility usage. The other companies are just focused on, using your car, using, Airbnb is still facilities, I guess you could say, at the same time. Now, what led you to the concept or at least the transition that said, you know what, e-commerce is going to be the place for me? Hey guys, thanks for listening as always, and I'm glad that you continue to support with each and every download and subscription and share. One of the things that I want to ask you, though, is where are you listening to me from right now? I know some of you, maybe you're on a treadmill, maybe you're washing dishes, maybe you're walking that dog, and some of you are actually in a vehicle driving right now. One of the fun things that you can do to get some of your time back is begin to living a car-free existence. But even then, it can be a little complicated. So one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to go over to Zipcar. Go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary. It's a way that I am able to still go get a car just for a few hours, very, very simply, so that if I have a lot of errands to run and sheets to drop off and running to the short-term rentals, or if I just want to go for a long trip up to LA and back, etc., I can rent a car for a very, very short period of time. And the cool part is I don't even have to pay for any gas. Again, go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary.
And that actually came from one of my customers. And we had been doing just a little bit of web work with them. And because in addition to doing this facilities scheduling stuff, we had started to dabble into how can we tie databases into websites in general. And what I was thinking at the time was, hey, we really need to take this company nationwide. And my partner was like, I kind of like it as a lifestyle business. I'm not really interested in that. So we ended up splitting ways when this one company came to us and said, they were a concrete pumping company, and they sold concrete pumps that cost like $500,000. At the time, we weren't going to be selling too many $500,000 pumps off of a website, but they had a bunch of contractors that needed to buy things from them as well. They might be buying parts to the pump. They might be buying things like safety vests and hard hats and so forth, things that they needed on their job. And they said, we really don't want our receptionist taking all these phone calls to these contractors just to have them purchase a hard hat. Is there anything that you can do to help us out? Well, we had the database technology at that point. I knew how to tie a database into a website. And so the answer was, sure, I can do that. And before I knew it, I had ended up writing an e-commerce package. There were not a lot of e-commerce packages out there at the time, because this is 1995. This is actually a year before Amazon started. And
wow,
we started writing our own e-commerce package. And I guess one thing led to another, and we really started concentrating at that point on doing wholesale applications rather than retail applications, because the contractors, for example, would go out there and they wouldn't buy just a hard hat. They were buying for a whole crew. So they would be buying, 20, 30 hard hats, 20, 30 safety vests, all at the same time type of thing. And so we actually went to the Denver Merchandise Mart and were working with manufacturers and distributors of products that were in turn selling products to retail stores. So we were not at the time taking a credit card on an e-commerce website. If you think about the $500,000 concrete pump, not too many people are going to put down a credit card for a $500,000 concrete pump.
No.
They wanted some alternative ways of paying. I need to pay this thing on whatever my established credit terms are. And I need to be able to bulk order things. Rather than seeing one product displayed on the screen at a time, I need to have a list of items. I already know what the product looks like. I just need to have a list of items where I can say, I need 20 of these, 30 of these, 20 of those, 30 of these. Here's my total, check out, bill me on my pre-established terms. So we really developed one of the early wholesale applications for doing e-commerce. As we started doing more and more of that, of course, the retail stores wanted to get in on the action and have people purchase products on the internet as well. And we started building in some retail features to it as well. What we ended up finding out over time is that now there was lots of people out there building software and building software better than I was building it, especially on retail shopping carts. And we said, hey, if we're going to do retail shopping carts, we need to partner up with some of the big people out there doing it. So today we actually work with a number of shopping cart softwares out there, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, Magento, all of the big names. And like I said, those people are building software where they were putting a lot more engineers into it and dedicating a lot more money than what I was doing. So that's where we are today. We actually are building e-commerce platforms utilizing other people's software.
Got it. So when it comes down to it, what would you say is the basic components of a successful e-commerce store?
The number one thing that, how I was saying relationships are really what business is all about. That's really what you're trying to do with an e-commerce store as well, is build a relationship with the customer. And the best way to do that is establish a very strong level of trust with them.
But hold on 1 second. And I get that. And I had a feeling you were going to say this, but I know like other people who are listening, they're like, how I'm just selling widgets and whatsits online. They come to the store, they're going to be ready to buy already. I mean, the relationship part is what I'm missing. How does a e-commerce store build a relationship? And because in my head, that relationship I have no reason to even go to your store unless we have some sort of a relationship, because it's not like I'm randomly going to type that in.
Yeah. And the best thing that people can do really, I think, is to provide lots and lots of information and not charge for that information.
Whoa, say that again. Everybody needs to hear that part.
Okay. Provide lots and lots of information and not charge for that information. For example, I have an aquarium at my house, and I stumbled across this one site that sells aquarium supplies and fish over the internet. You can actually buy aquarium fish over the internet, and they will deliver live fish to your house within 24 hours.
What?
But the thing that they do is they don't really push that they're selling fish. What they do is they have all this information about, if you're interested in this particular type of fish, here's information on how to take care of it. Here's where they originated from. Here's the other types of fish that they are compatible with in your tank and so forth. And they send out lots of information like this. They might do it through their blog posts. They might do it through their videos. They might do it just through descriptions on their web pages, but they provide tons and tons of information so that they have become, in my mind, the established experts on the types of products that they're selling. So you've built up this trust factor with them of, hey, these guys really know what they're talking about. And dang, I had a fish die. I need to replace it. Where am I going to go? That's what people need to do, regardless of what you're selling, is to build it up to where you are the only choice in the customer's mind because you are the established expert.
Got it. So it was that kind of the, I guess, the impetus, if you will, for the book, The Influencer Effect?
The influencer effect, not really, to tell you the truth. It kind of came out of some other things that I was doing. Now, clearly, that is a big part of it, is that you are now an expert and people are seeking you out because you have expert advice. But the book itself was kind of fun. As you mentioned, I've written a couple of books, and this one felt like it kind of wrote itself. The whole book, from the time that I started writing it to the time that it was ready to go to the proofreader and the publisher, was about 6 weeks.
Wow.
And it was a whole bunch of things that I had been working on, obviously, with my clients over a number of years, over a decade and a half of information in there. But I had given a presentation, actually, at the Denver Merchandise Mart. They had hired me to come in and give a speech, and an hour-long presentation. And I did that presentation for them, and then I was kind of like, I've already done all the work. I've put together an hour-long PowerPoint. I've got, hours and hours worth of notes. I may as well just turn it into a book. So that's how that particular book came about. But the message of being an expert and accessing other people who are experts to help promote your products and services is really what the message of that book is about.
So when it comes down to it today, in your opinion, is there someone who couldn't do this? I mean, when it comes down to it, if I'm listening to you right now, I'm going, you know what, Greg, I have this need for income. Maybe I'm approaching retirement, or I'm thinking about it, and I think a web store is a way to make that happen. But now you're telling me I got to make a whole bunch of videos?
You may or may not have to make videos, but the thing that you absolutely have to do if you are truly going to make it work for you is you have to become the only choice for what it is that you are promoting. You need to be unique in some way, and you need people to go, I know who the expert is on that subject, and that's where they end up going kind of by default. That it's absolutely critical that you do that, because there's so much competition out there. And if you're just putting a commodity out there, guess what? Amazon's going to beat you every time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, for those that have listened this far and want to follow up with some more and find out more about what you've got going on, what's going to be the best way for them to catch up with you?
Well, if you go to my website, gregjameson.com, there's actually a couple of different pages on there. There's one that is just called Connect, and it's got all of the different ways that you can connect with me. There's also another one on there that's just called Free Gift. So you can just go to gregjameson.com/free gift, and you'll get some good information there. And that way we'll be connected through email, and we can touch base through there.
Excellent. Now, as we end, I have a question here for you that I think would be good for others to hear your perspective on. Let's pretend that, someone listening is on that, what I like to call the precipice of decision. They're possibly even standing in front of the superhero outfit store, ready to, put on their cape for the first time and make a web store happen for themselves. But like I know, is that oftentimes when we reach these points of decisions, we also have a companion, and that companion comes in the form of a voice. And that voice can occasionally say things like, Are you kidding? I mean, do you honestly think you're going to be able to compete with Amazon? Do you honestly think you can do a web? I mean, you are going to make a what? And it's going to earn how? And for some people, they're actually related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that the person listening is actually going to go ahead and follow through in the next 24 to 48 hours, in fact. They're going to do what you say. So, Greg, what would you suggest that they do?
I would suggest that they actually do it. Jump in with both feet, but understand that very few things in life can you accomplish all by yourself. You're going to need some partners along the way, and align yourself with the very best people that you can, but don't be afraid to give it a shot.
Agreed. Well, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to share your information, your knowledge, as well as your wisdom here with us today at the CashFlow Diary.
Like I said, I really appreciate being on here, Jay, and this was fun.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means, well, take action. Go to the website. Why? Because you know, like I know, that you've been thinking about it for far too long. And now you've got someone who has laid a path. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.